Viewer discretion is advised.
Did you know that there was another Deflategate in the league and that you have never heard about it because it involved tackling dummy David Carr and not Tom Brady? In 2006, the most sacked man ever admitted that his balls were of lower pressure than legally allowed. For this, he was not suspended, and his punishment was to remain as the Texans QB.
Texans Robert C. McNair. Bob McNair founded Cogent Technologies, which he sold for a fortune in 1999 to Enron, and he owns a couple of power plants in New York and West Virginia. He now chairs an investment group and famously said that you can't let inmates run a prison in regards to the anthem protests, in one of the poorest choices of words ever.
What sucks more than being an expansion team? Being a team that didn't get an OP expansion draft. In 2005, the 1-9 Texans, led by David Carr, jumped out to a 24-3 lead on Joe Vitt's Rams before half. The Rams, which still had pieces of a decent offense like Torrey Holt and Steven Jackson, came roaring back and eventually won the game on a Ryan Fitzpatrick TD pass to Kevin Curtis. Well, wasn't 2017 just so special for the Jags, as Saxonville didn't just punch people in the mouth, they also punched the ball in the end zone. In this Week 15 beatdown, the Texans got held to 186 yards of total offense and gave up 4 sacks. Blake Bortles went 21 of 29 for 326 yards and 3 TDs. More surprising is that the Texans haven't gotten blown out by more in their history, as bad as they have been. So whose idea was it to pay Brock Osweiler $72 million over 4 years with $37 million of it guaranteed? You can blame former GM Rick Smith for that epic backfire, as Suckweiler only played 1 season with the Texans and threw 16 picks to 15 TDs. To make up for their bad move, the Texans had to gift the Browns a second-round pick so someone would take his cap hit, who they used to take Nick Chubb, a move even the Browns couldn't mess up.
Bad things.
The world's first indoor sports arena, the Astrodome, has found itself abandoned for the last 11 years. A great place for football, but meh for baseball. The dome was closed in 2008 after code violations and was partially demolished in 2013. It is now a national landmark and cannot be destroyed. It's hard to believe the city of Houston has hosted only 3 Super Bowls, and none of them were in the Astrodome. Once NRG was open, the NFL had no more excuses, as the state-of-the-art retractable roof dome hosted 2 Pats victories, a bizarre nip slip, and the outer walls amazingly held up while a certain team collapsed on its field. The transparent roof is actually fabric. This is a top-level stadium. It's hard to believe that this place once hosted the biggest football game on earth. In its now dilapidated state as the Rice Owls home field, its upper deck is so unstable that games where they expect large crowds have to be moved to nearby NRG. But yet in 1974, this was the site of Super Bowl VIII, and it didn't even look good back then. The stadium wasn't so glamorous, and it had putrid AstroTurf. Probably the most forgettable place the Super Bowl has ever been played. Recent renovations to this field helped boost it up the list in the upkeep category, as the NFL's first retractable roof dome has stood tall, but not on roster moves. Some may not like the heat on game day that gets trapped in the building, but from an aesthetic standpoint, it is a pretty stadium. In the blink of an eye, the Houston Texans went from Super Bowl contender to the owners of the first overall pick. The Texans had won playoff games in 2011 and 2012 and entered 2013 with huge expectations. They had J.J. Watt, an all-time wide receiver in Andre Johnson, and a rookie stud named DeAndre Hopkins. Their only problem was that their quarterback was throwing too many touchdowns to the wrong team. In 2013, Matt Schaub threw a pick six in 4 straight games, an NFL record. Despite starting 2-0, the Texans lost their next 12, fired head coach Gary Kubiak, and tanked their way to the #1 overall pick in the 2014 draft. In a pool that featured Khalil Mack, Mike Evans, Taylor Lewan, OBJ, and Aaron Donald, the Texans spent that first overall pick on Jadeveon Clowney. Throughout his time in Houston, Clowney occasionally flashed his uber talent, but always underachieved opposite J.J. Watt. New head coach Bill O'Brien made the playoffs in 2015, but he and his starting quarterback Brian Hoyer were crushed by the Chiefs. A little bit of more bottoming out in 2016 got them their best hope at a championship: Deshaun Watson. Although a potentially all-time rookie season was cut short due to injury, the Texans had settled on their best quarterback in franchise history, which, isn't saying much. Of course, the problem, as always for the Texans, was head coach /GM/dictator Bill O'Brien. Last year, the Texans jumped out to a 24-point lead in KC before O'Brien's terrifying mismanagement caused the lead to evaporate. Maybe the quickest meltdown since Chernobyl. The Texans were bounced and responded in the offseason by trading their best player. Having offloaded Jadeveon Clowney the year before, O'Brien followed it up by dismantling a team that was in position to make a Super Bowl run, and he got just a second-rounder, a rapidly aging David Johnson, and a bag of magic beans in return. After a horrible start in 2020, going winless through their first 4 games, O'Brien was fired, and a puppet regime was installed. Back to tanking.
Because of Sanchez success. Here's a ground ball right side, could do it. The Houston Astros are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
You did it, Houston. You finally won a championship. Doesn't it feel good after over 20 years of futility? I think you'd rather win a football title given the circumstances, but a break from the agony of baseball is sure to be a relief. What with always playing second fiddle in every realm, it may have been won by blood magic, but now is the time to celebrate. A great age is ahead of you. The Astros are a dynasty in the making. The Rockets are championship contenders. The Texans are veering on the right path. At the end of the day, the city's packed with hell, for a winner was worth it. Oh, how little you truly knew about the deal you made.
He's taken off. Peters trying to chase him. That is not a fair match. Lewis is going to break it. 98 yards.
The devil wears many disguises. Sometimes he is the beggar asking for a handout. Others, the rich businessman offering a proposition. But in this case, it's a she. A sultry succubus who can take you to places far beyond your wildest dreams. One night of pleasure, all for the small cost of eternal loyalty. The she-devil will grant your wish and all the climaxes that come with it. We already know what she conjured. A World Series and endless adulation from the baseball audience. But there will be a bounty that's required as payment for her sorcery. The question isn't a matter of if it's paid, but when it starts.
2 people familiar with the situation tell the AP that Houston Texans QB Deshaun Watson sustained a season-ending knee injury in practice on Thursday.
Try the very next day. Deshaun Watson, the budding star quarterback of the Houston Texans, suffers a season-ending injury just as the Texans were starting to turn their season around. They had spent a ransom desperately trying to dig themselves out of the awful Brock Osweiler deal signed a year earlier, and they were seemingly out of it. Even Rick Smith and his eternal contract couldn't stop what was looking to be an interesting squad. They were free. That was until the deal you made. You have to pay up, you know. Doesn't matter that J.J. Watt was already out beforehand. That was before the proposition. The result is having to deal with Tom Savage at QB again. You know how this goes. The season becomes a fucking nightmare. Every single player with a dam is injured and they lose 8 of their last 9. That's not even getting into a career ender for your starting tight end. Add to that your geriatric owner butchering a common figure of speech, creating even more scandal than you once thought. Even in this catastrophic season, this isn't even the icing on the cake. No, there's even more to deal with. Their first 2 picks in the next draft are property of the Cleveland Browns. Turns out having to shed Osweiler's contract and trade up in a panic for Deshaun Watson at a greater cost than expected. But they still have a quarterback, and that's good. Not the worst outcome in the world. And they also have the Houston Rockets. Look at all of the talent they have now. A big splash in the offseason to finally get them over the top in CP3. The yin to James Harden's yang, a group that can make it rain from beyond the three-point line. A well-balanced roster flush with depth and ability to make a true impact. The Western Conference Finals. This is their time. Not only being better than the Golden State Warriors, but in some cases dominating them. Game 5 is their moment. A 3-2 series lead and an outstanding victory getting them close to a finals berth. Oh, you seriously thought you were finished paying off your debt, weren't you? Admit it, you thought it was just the Watson injury? Oh no, this succubus is going to suck the life out of you. You'll enjoy it as she takes out Chris Paul. And you're not only going to like it, you'll see them lose in the most brutal, agonizing way possible. At their own game. Game 6 turning into a rout. Golden State coming to Houston afterwards and humiliating you with what should have been yours. You liked three-pointers, didn't you? That was your greatest strength as a team? This succubus will have you miss 27 straight in Game 7. You aren't just breaking records, you're breaking hearts with pleasure. And you'll scream in excitement for it. All for a World Series, right? You can at least sign CP3 to a gaudy extension in blood that will in no way come back to haunt you. But it's okay. The Astros are coming back into play now. They're still just as good as ever. They got a big acquisition, yet another ace for the rotation in Garrett Cole. The lineup is just as potent. Alex Bregman is emerging as a legitimate MVP candidate. Justin Verlander becoming a champion for women's rights. And rewarding him by acquiring a woman-beating piece of shit in Roberto Osuna to close out more than games. All of the talent still on display as you pull on Osuna on the Indians in the ALDS. It points to another outstanding outcome. Only one issue. The Boston Red Sox are an even greater machine. The lady in red smiles in glee as they cannot be stopped. Even for the defending World Series champions, they have no chance against them. Don't feel bad, no one does. Not even the Dodgers, who also proceed to get their asses kicked. Did I also mention that their manager was your old bench coach? Maybe he stole some of your mojo in the process, just saying. But the Texans, you cry. The Texans! They are going to be the ones that lead us to another championship. Our team is finally healthy for once, you say. Look at how Deshaun Watson is chucking the rock, throwing spirals to DeAndre Hopkins. Winning 11 of 13 to finish the year. Everything is looking so bright. Even the hell of Rick Smith is gone. You're free, Houston. You have a hot team revving into the playoffs looking to finally make a statement to the rest of the league. And it is indeed. It's one of humiliation. The Indianapolis Colts march into Houston and don't even keep it close. It's just another repeated frustration. The team still doesn't have enough. No points until the fourth quarter. 3 for 13 on third downs. Everyone blames Deshaun for taking sacks when his offensive line is a total sieve and his head coach masquerades as a quarterback whisperer. Silence. That's all that remains. But that wouldn't be enough of a punishment for the succubus. No, this is too routine. A generic tough loss in a wildcard game doesn't satisfy her lust. The real ride begins off of the field. Back in November of 2018, the old codger of an owner for the Texans moved on to that great prison beyond the pearly gates. His son, Cal McNair, has his own visions on how to move Houston forward. That new GM, Brian Gain, what about him? Well, he sucks. He's only had a year to prove himself, but that's honestly enough for someone to be judged for their work. Out the window you go! Enjoy the fall to your death! The future is here, and it's in the form of the New England Patriots. Nick Caserio, their director of player personnel. He will be the new management czar for the Texans, Cal believes. There's only one snag. He's still under a binding contract. With a cool, suave demeanor, Houston tries to cuddle up nice and close to New England. Hey, can we talk to your executive so we can take him? We'll give you some candy. The Patriots tell them to fuck off. So they resort to flat-out poaching him from the team, but are caught. New England threatens to sic them in the court of law with a tampering charge. Houston has endless egg on their face. The league laughs at them for their failure. But don't worry, Texans, you'll have a GM by committee. You have an outstanding mind you can bring up to the forefront, at least temporarily. None other than the quarterback whisperer himself, Bill O'Brien. The personal choice of the She-Devil. Witness the majesty of his personnel decisions. Jadeveon Clowney is holding out and you don't want to pay him the big bucks? Well, just trade him for significantly lesser value. You'll need that cap space to help out Deshaun on the line. I mean, Laramie Tunsil is really good, but that's a really steep price to pay. Let's go back to the Rockets. They still have the same roster, barring a failed experiment with Carmelo Anthony, but things are looking up for them moving forward. They're playing the Warriors again in the postseason, but look at how battered they are. Boogie Cousins is out. Kevin Durant is out. Andre Iguodala beaten up. Draymond Green fouled out in Game 5. A home match in Game 6 against a highly shredded Golden State team. Yet they still lose. Series over. And you want to know something? Nobody feels bad for them. They cheer the Rockets being embarrassed by a shell of a team. It might have to do with the Rockets' grievance against the league for alleged unfair reffing in the Warriors series in 2018, even though we all know the real reasons why they lost that series. A team heinously unlikable with allegedly toxic personalities and a play style that has them live and die by the sword. It's a fitting end. But that would imply previous debts had been paid. The succubus demands more. That gruesome twosome of Paul and Harden needs to go. They're going for the jugular, arguing with each other. Things have become untenable. James Harden is pissed that CP3 is not a strip club where he can throw money around in. Frustrated in the power struggle, Chris Paul demands a trade. But who's going to take on that god-awful contract he was signed to? Especially with the regression he suffered. Oh, there are ways to get around this. But the cost is going to be double or nothing.
Got some breaking news on SportsCenter. The NBA stealing all the headlines again. Our man Adrian Wojnarowski reporting Russell Westbrook on his way to Houston. The Thunder agreeing to trade the 8-time All-Star to the Rockets for Chris Paul.
Russell Westbrook. An upgrade? Or just a greater risk for a team that's riding on the edge? Him pairing with Harden? Hell to the yes. Two ISO-heavy players that are best with the ball in their hands and are alleged of putting their personal stats first. It's only going to cost a lot of future first-round picks, fortunately lottery protected. As long as you're still good by then, it should be fine. I mean, it's not like they created an international incident the succubus will feast on.
And the National Basketball Association, or NBA in the U.S., is facing a huge backlash from U.S. lawmakers for its reaction to this tweet by the Houston Rockets general manager, a tweet backing pro-democracy demonstrations right here in Hong Kong.
The Chinese overlords of the NBA did not like that. GM Daryl Morey showing solidarity with the protesters in Hong Kong? That's verboten in this day and age. He doesn't realize that China is a huge reason for the NBA's exponential growth over the past decade. What is Hong Kong protesting? Human rights abuses, stripping of freedoms, and increased repression by the People's Republic of China. Enter a new shitstorm where none of us know if Morey is going to be alive, let alone still have a job by the time it ends. Unlike other injustices, nobody rushes to Morey's side. Even the NBA's Aristotle and LeBron James all but tells him to shut up and dribble. I know nobody wants a political tangent, but his tweet cost the NBA hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue from China boycotting them. They're not going to take their bitch fit that lightly. You may as well prepare for a blackballing so swift you'll paint the number 8 on Morey's back. She would demand no less of a torment. Let's ignore the shit show and go somewhere safer. Like the Astros. They're still good and gearing up for another World Series run. One of the best records in baseball, complemented by a core of elite hitters, ace pitchers, and the absolute cutting edge of analytics, dominating everything that comes in their way en route to another World Series run. Jose Altuve putting the dagger in the hearts of those godless Yankees at Minute Maid Park. Did I mention this was also part of the deal you made a few years ago? She never said your championship was going to be pure. How devastating will it be? I wouldn't say anything too drastic, only baseball's most notorious cheating scandal in almost 100 years. You ever wonder how the Astros were doing so well at home? Almost too good to be true, you could argue. Well, hear for yourself. An intricate signal-stealing system. Cameras from the bullpen would spy on the catcher's signs. It would then be relayed to a clubhouse employee, who would use a high-tech trash can to bang whether the pitch would be fastball or off-speed. This was going on for years. Most notably, wouldn't you guess it, the infamous 2017 season. They even did it during the playoffs. You don't get to enjoy that championship anymore, Houston. It's forever ruined. Every single time you'll mention that World Series, it will be marked by scandal. The main cost of the deal. You will cry there's still a chance for another championship, the icing on the cake. You'll bargain and plead with the succubus, but she has other plans. Washington made a deal with her first. They changed up their signals for the World Series. Minute Maid Park was where you best performed, eh? You'll now get to lose 4 straight at home to lose the series in a massive upset to the Nationals. Look at Max Scherzer. He gets championship glory. He's a future Hall of Famer. What do you have? Hypocrites, frauds, and woman beaters. You gloated so hard about your powerhouse that you forgot to check the foundations underneath you. The assistant GM's drunken tirades, the blissful ignorance of everyone around them, the repeated denials and doubling down of the players involved in the scheme, it was your undoing. Now you get the ultimate prize. Permanent scarring. Jeff Luhnow and AJ Hinch suspended for a year. Eventually fired from the team, their reputations ruined. Alex Cora and Carlos Beltran also fired from their jobs due to their roles in 2017. The team fined millions of dollars in losing future draft picks. Fan favorites like Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve, and Alex Bregman becoming some of the most hated men in the league. Things getting so dire they completely panic in the opposite direction and hire Dusty Baker to try and rally the locker room. More layers to add to the punishment. But even then, the ignorance is still on display. Talk to an Astros fan about you-know-what, and you will still receive indignance and haughtiness about this. I'd be doing the same too. This was their shining moment, the culmination of years of frustrations. Now they defend their rancid heap like it was the shining fruits of the Nile. They get to be dunked on by Yankees fans, the same one they had beaten to a title. Permanent scarring. You think you're finally finished paying up for that championship, right? Oh, how naive you thought you were. They're still the Houston Texans to highlight. They have potential, but they never really break through to that next echelon of team. One week they'll dominate their foes. The next they're being embarrassed by the Denver Broncos at home. Butching getting pissed at fans is merely a bonus. They have a home wildcard game again, but they're in trouble. Fortunately, they're saved from a repeat of last season thanks to Deshaun Watson bailing them out against a Bills team that was still developing, but they'd have to go into Kansas City next. Look at how optimistic they are. Crushing a sloppy Chiefs team in the first quarter. Running away with this game as if it were Nuke Hopkins on a deep route. A 24-0 lead in the second quarter. You were expecting this to be another black mark on Kansas City's tortured legacy. Oh no. Houston, you're getting the spiritual successor to 35-3. Blame it on that hack of a coach who decides to fake a punt on a 4th and 5 on his own 30-yard line, when he kicked a field goal on a 4th and inches at Kansas City's 10. Blame it on the suspect's secondary collapsing against the Chiefs' passing attack. Blame it on years of apathetic ownership who have allowed incompetence and mediocrity to reign supreme, wasting prime talents as they count the money coming in. No, Texans, you deserved this. You deserved blowing that 24-point lead in less than 10 minutes. More humiliation. The whipping you continue to receive in the second half? You love it. It's what you live for. It fuels every single fiber of pessimism that weaves through your broken bodies. And you know nothing's going to change because that would involve being proactive. Are you ready for the punishment Bill O'Brien's going to get for his gross incompetence? For how he handcuffs the team as a coach and executive? You sure you're ready? Here it is. Permanent GM. Failing upwards, a staple of the Bill O'Brien experience. You may think this will hopefully mean he stands pat and does nothing, but that wouldn't be pleasurable enough for the succubus. She enjoys your suffering. You like DeAndre Hopkins? His amazing acrobatics, his beautiful catches? Too bad the butt chin doesn't. He has a different vision for this team. He doesn't want this Aaron Hernandez keeping his baby mamas around. Fuck him and fuck his desires for a new contract. He gets to go to Arizona for a running back. Not just any running back, but David Johnson. A man with an anchor of a contract that's been injury prone and hasn't had elite production in 3 years. You didn't even get a first-round pick back for the trouble. For this added question mark, Bill O'Brien throws money at Randall Cobb to replace Hopkins, or so you think. The LA Rams need to shed salary due to cap hell, so Houston, meet your inferior replacement. Brandon Cooks, an extremely inconsistent wide receiver with a history of concussions and a terrible contract to boot. You traded them a second ago with a bailout of their finances. You spent as much money than you would have if you just signed Hopkins to an extension and brought in someone like Melvin Gordon. And for what? So you can become the laughingstock of the football realm? You really moving in the right direction, Houston? It's just what your old owner feared would happen. The inmates are running the prison. Just not the ones he expected to. The hand of the dunces that feel everything they're doing is correct. It continues on and on into an unprecedented pandemic. In certain cases, it's a good thing the sports world is on pause. The Houston Rockets needed this break. Refresh and regroup to enter the bubble, but our lovely lady was hungry for more pain. And not just a general series loss, but to make it excruciating. Maybe you can go back to having nice things in life. Now be a good boy and put the ball in your mouth. The she-devil's got her torture outfit on again. Daniel House gave in to, let's call them carnal urges. A marathon session with her personally in his hotel room got him kicked out of the bubble. He was the key piece coming off of their bench. They still would have lost to the Lakers regardless, but we have to make it extra painful for you. Russell Westbrook, the famed triple-double man, he's getting them in bricks, missed assignments, and turnovers. He was deflating, just like small ball against a team with one of the best big men in the game. It spells the end for Mike D'Antoni here. Daryl Morey was nowhere to be found during the execution, going into hiding out of fear of being assassinated by Chinese agents. Perhaps with their stubborn analytical approaches gone, the Rockets will be more successful, but you know that won't be the case. The succubus has them in a sleeper hole. They're locked into being second best. Triple-double man has demanded a trade. Key depth pieces are livid. James Harden might step back onto another team. They are doomed. As for the Texans, they locked nearly every major piece to bloated extensions that may result in agonizing cap hell in the offseason. They had no leverage in negotiations with Laramie Tunsil. He bent the organization over and reaped the rewards of quarterback money. And they aren't just laughable due to their offseason moves. They're even worse. The offense has absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. The defense is a turnstile. They have no secondary. They desperately miss DeAndre Hopkins. Bill O'Brien is more interested in trying to justify a trade than to win games. They immediately slouch out the gate and start the year 0-4. The team was expected to win their division and everything looks like pure shit. The Butchin is indignant in his approach instead of admitting failure. The demon has threw everything into chaos already. J.J. Watt had enough and rebelled against Bob the Tyrannical's farce of a reign. An open mutiny ensued as O'Brien was Robespierred as the final casualty of the new French Revolution. Despite the evil being fought, it may take years to undo all of the damage done. The true cost may be too great to overcome. One more thing, you wanted a sliver of comfort from potential top draft picks? Their first two selections this year belong to Miami. It's 2017 all over again. Despite the Texans' perpetual failure, nobody can boo the Astros in person for their transgressions. But you know who can? The gods. Justin Verlander and Roberto Osuna robbed of the shortened season due to major injuries. Verlander possibly never pitching again. Yordan Alvarez also feeling the wrath of the injury bug as well. They slump into a playoff spot with a sub-500 record and the world wanting them dead. But the succubus isn't pleased. She wants you to have hope. She will bless your hitters with their talents and the child soldiers in the pitching ranks with wonderful gifts. They crush their opponents early and often, but are down 3-0 against the Rays in the ALCS. This is when she lures you back in. Maybe the payment is finished. Maybe you can have another ride with the temptress in Salvation. You wish for nothing more than her embrace in a dance of decadence, don't you? You've grown lustful of her figure, of her seductive ways. But she likes to tease. She believes the key to her pleasure is in torment. Game 7 is a dud. They are cock-blocked by fate itself. But you know you live to die. You desire nothing more than to be subjected to it. What is hope? Something that was once foreign? Perhaps it is again. The cycle must continue on. The only thing you wish for is that this is the end of your payment for the World Series ring. Is it? We don't know. That is only up for that sultry lady in red to decide. Even if it is truly paid in the blood of thousands, you know what it can't take away? The fact that the city of Houston sold its soul. All for a measly championship a few years ago. And not even for legitimate glory. They sold out for a tainted one. Even for a so-called golden age, it is filled with blemishes and deceit, backstabbing and treachery, an arrogant failure that seeks only vain accolades. This is the payment the city must pay. The true infinite cost of deals with the devil. The rest of what happened? That's merely collateral. An unnecessary cost, but it was merely part of her endgame. She wanted your city to suffer. She wants you to have no joy. The urban wastelands you call a sprawl span from sea to shining sea, yet it will never be enough to hide from what you truly owe. The price you have paid is great, but I doubt it will ever be enough to satisfy the urges and desires of the succubus you courted. Regret? You should have thought of that long ago. Eons before you even considered making such a covenant with evil. Oh, how little you truly knew about the deal you made.